The hospital hallways always felt different after midnight. The bright white light seemed softer, the footsteps quieter, and the world outside somehow farther away. Emma had learned to love that silence. While most of the city slept, she found purpose in the stillness, checking 4 lines, adjusting pillows, offering gentle reassurances to those who couldn't sleep. She was known among the staff as the nurse who never rushed, the one who stayed a few minutes longer when someone needed to talk. That night, however, those few extra minutes would quietly alter the course of her life. In room 214 sat Mr. Harold Whitmore, an elderly patient recovering from minor heart complications. He rarely had visitors. No flowers. No phone calls. Just a polite smile whenever someone entered the room. The chart described him in clinical terms: age 72, stable vitals, widowed, but it didn't capture the loneliness that lingered in his eyes. Emma noticed it on her first shift with him. While other nurses completed their tasks quickly, she pulled up a chair. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. Harold shook his head. "Hospitals are loud, even when they're quiet," he replied. His voice carried the weight of someone who had once been used to full dinner tables and laughter-filled rooms. That night, Emma finished her duties and glanced at the clock. Her shift had ended 15 minutes ago. She could leave, go home, and collapse into bed. Instead, she stayed. She refilled his water, adjusted his blanket, and asked about the photograph on his bedside table, a faded picture of a smiling woman with bright eyes. "My wife, Margaret," he said, his expression shifting to something fragile yet warm. "We were married for 47 years. Emma listened as he spoke about Margaret's love for gardening, her stubborn insistence on baking pies from scratch, and the quiet way she used to squeeze his hand when words weren't necessary. There was no impatience in Emma's posture, no glance at the clock. She simply listened. Sometimes the greatest medicine wasn't found in a syringe or a pill bottle, it was found in presence. As days passed, Emma continued to stay a little longer after each shift. She learned that Harold had built a business from nothing in his early 20s. He mentioned the company only briefly and never boasted. Instead, he talked about long nights in a small garage office, about taking risks when everyone told him to play it safe. He spoke about Margaret encouraging him when the bank almost foreclosed on their home. To Emma, he was just a man who missed his wife terribly. She never once wondered about his finances or social standing. To her, every patient deserved dignity, whether they owned a mansion or rented a tiny apartment. One particularly stormy evening, thunder rattled the hospital windows. The power flickered for a moment, and Harold's hands trembled slightly. Emma, who had just clocked out, heard the storm from the hallway and turned back toward his room. She found him staring at the darkened sky. Without a word, she sat beside him and gently placed her hand over his. "Storms don't last forever," she said with a reassuring smile. He looked at her, eyes misty. "You remind me of Margaret," he whispered. She used to say the same thing. It was in that quiet moment that something shifted. Harold began to ask about Emma's life. She told him about her student loans, about growing up in a small town where her mother worked double shifts to support 3 children. She admitted that sometimes she felt invisible in the world, like her efforts were just drops in a vast ocean. Harold listened intently. "Kindness," he said slowly, "is never invisible. It echoes farther than you think." A week later, Harold was discharged. Emma helped pack his small bag and wheeled him to the entrance. There were no waiting relatives, no chauffeured cars, just a sleek black sedan and a well-dressed driver who stepped out quickly to assist. Emma assumed it was a hired service. Harold squeezed her hand before leaving. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. "Not treating me. Not managing me. Seeing me." She smiled and wished him health and happiness. Life returned to normal. New patients arrived. Shifts blurred together. Then, one afternoon, the hospital director called Emma into his office. Her heart raced. Had she made a mistake? Was there a complaint? Instead, she found 2 sharply dressed executives seated across from the director. On the table lay a familiar photograph of Margaret. The director cleared his throat. "Emma, do you know who Mr. Harold Whitmore is?" She nodded. "A kind widower who needed someone to talk to." The executives exchanged a glance. One of them leaned forward. Mr. Whitmore is the founder of Whitmore Industries. He built one of the largest manufacturing companies in the country. He's also a philanthropist. Emma blinked, stunned. The name echoed in her memory. She'd seen it on city buildings and scholarship plaques. He has requested to see you, the director continued. Confusion mixed with disbelief as Emma later stepped into a private conference room. Harold stood there, looking stronger than she had ever seen him, dressed in an elegant suit. But his eyes were the same, gentle, searching. I didn't tell you who I was, he said softly, because I wanted to know who you were. He explained that after Margaret's death, he withdrew from the world. He had wealth beyond imagination, yet no peace. During his hospital stay, he expected clinical professionalism. Instead, he found compassion without expectation. You stayed when you didn't have to, he said. You cared when no one was watching. He revealed his intention to establish a foundation in Margaret's name, dedicated to supporting nurses who demonstrate extraordinary empathy and to funding programs that combat loneliness among the elderly. And he wanted Emma to help lead it. Tears filled her eyes. Not because of the money, not because of the prestige, but because someone had noticed her heart. The girl who once felt invisible now stood at the threshold of something far greater than herself. Months later, the Margaret Whitmore Compassion Initiative launched, transforming patient care programs across the state. Emma didn't leave nursing, she expanded it. She became a voice for human connection in healthcare, reminding professionals that charts and diagnoses are only part of the story. And Harold? He found purpose again, honoring the love he once shared by planting seeds of kindness in countless lives. Their bond wasn't built on wealth or status, but on something rare and powerful, genuine humanity. And here's the truth, you never know whose life you're touching when you choose to stay a little longer, to listen a little deeper, to care a little more. Kindness has a way of opening doors you never knew existed. If this story moved your heart even a little, imagine the impact we can create together. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional stories that remind us all of the strength hidden in simple acts of compassion. Because sometimes, the smallest moments become the greatest turning points of all.